Spiritual sight versus physical vision. We live in a world that constantly reminds us to trust what we see. We are told to see it to believe it, to observe with our eyes, to analyze what is visible, and to measure truth by appearance. Our physical vision, this remarkable gift of the eyes, helps us navigate our daily lives, recognize faces, read words, and distinguish colors, shapes, and objects. But what if I told you that physical vision is not enough? What if I told you that the most important things in life cannot be seen with the eyes at all? There's another kind of sight, one far more powerful, more enduring, and infinitely more accurate than anything your eyes can perceive. It is called spiritual sight. And unlike physical vision, which sees form and surface, spiritual sight sees essence and truth. It does not depend on light, distance, or angle. It depends on alignment. Alignment with your inner self, your divine guidance, your purpose, and your higher awareness. Many of the greatest mistakes we make in life happen because we trust only what we can physically see. We trust the charm of appearances and ignore the whispers of intuition. We see someone smiling and assume they are kind. We see wealth and assume success. We see struggle and assume failure. Yet time and time again, we are proven wrong. Because the eyes can deceive, but the soul cannot be fooled. Think about the times in your life when everything looked good on the outside, yet something inside you knew it wasn't right. Or the times when everyone else saw a dead end, but something deep in you said, keep going. That wasn't physical vision. That was spiritual sight. And this kind of vision doesn't just come from nowhere. It is developed through experience, through pain, through silence, and through trust in something greater than ourselves. It is a gift that becomes sharper the more we use it. And once it is awakened, you can never go back to seeing the world the same way again. Today, I want to take you on a journey beyond the eyes and into the soul. We will explore the limits of physical vision, awaken the power of spiritual sight, and learn how to live not just by what is seen, but by what is true. Because to truly live, to truly lead, and to truly love, you must learn to see beyond appearances and perceive with your spirit. So if you are tired of being misled by illusions, if you are ready to see clearly in a world that lives in blindness, then open not just your eyes, but your heart. The limitations of physical vision. From the moment we are born, our eyes become our windows to the world. Through them, we learn shapes, colors, motion, and form. We are taught that seeing is knowing, that the truth is visible, and that reality exists only in what our physical senses can confirm. And while this might serve us well in our early years, helping us recognize danger, find food, navigate space, it becomes a great limitation when we begin the deeper journey of understanding ourselves, others, and the unseen forces that guide our lives. Physical vision is a tool, but it is also a trap. It shows us only what lies on the surface. It cannot see the pain behind a smile, the motives behind a gesture, or the strength hidden in the silence of someone who appears to be weak. It cannot distinguish truth from illusion, nor purpose from appearance. And yet, we so often rely on it as if it were all we had. Think about how much of our lives are influenced by what we see. We chase after things because they look glamorous. We judge people because they look different. We believe promises because they are wrapped in beautiful words and attractive packages. We walk away from opportunities because they seem small or invisible at first glance. And in doing so, we allow the eyes to become our masters rather than our servants. Have you ever been misled by what you saw? Have you ever trusted someone who looked sincere, only to find betrayal beneath the surface? Or doubted someone who seemed too quiet, too ordinary, only to later discover they carried a depth of wisdom and strength you never imagined? This is the problem with physical vision. It is limited. It can only interpret what is external. It cannot read the spirit, and it certainly cannot comprehend destiny. Consider a seed. To the physical eye, a seed looks lifeless, insignificant, almost useless. But within that tiny shell lies a forest, a future, a force of life waiting for the right conditions to be revealed. If you judged it by appearance alone, you'd miss its potential entirely. The same is true for people, for situations, and for divine timing. What looks small today may be preparing to become great tomorrow. What appears broken may be going through the very process that will make it whole. Physical vision can also be easily manipulated. Marketing agencies know this. So do politicians, advertisers, and even deceivers in our personal lives. They know that if something looks good, people will follow it. And if something looks messy or uncertain, people will avoid it, even if it holds the truth. That's why so many people fall into traps that are dressed as blessings and walk away from struggles that were actually disguised lessons. We must understand this. Physical vision is not evil. It is simply incomplete. It was never designed to guide your soul. It was never meant to help you discern your calling or your character. That task belongs to something far deeper. And yet, society keeps pushing us towards surface-level judgments. Swipe culture, status symbols, highlight reels. Everything is curated to look a certain way. We measure success by how shiny it looks, not by how much substance it carries. We call something beautiful because it pleases the eye, but we rarely ask if it feeds the spirit. Even our relationships suffer because of this. We seek partners who match a physical ideal, but not always those who carry a spiritual alignment. We befriend people based on common interests, but not shared values. We stay in jobs that look prestigious, while our hearts wither from a lack of purpose. All because we are following what we can see, instead of what we know deep down. Physical vision also becomes unreliable in moments of crisis. When the road ahead looks dark and uncertain, your eyes will tell you to turn back. When no evidence of progress is visible, your eyes will convince you that you've failed. But often, the greatest transformation is taking place in the dark. Growth happens in silence. Breakthroughs are born in obscurity. If you trust only what your eyes tell you, you'll quit before the miracle comes. The truth is, many of life's most powerful realities are invisible. You can't see love, but you feel it. You can't see faith, but you live by it. You can't see purpose, but it drives every choice you make. Just because something can't be seen doesn't mean it isn't real. In fact, the most enduring truths are often the ones that remain unseen by the physical eye. That is why, if we are to live meaningful lives, we must learn to see with more than just our eyes. We must recognize the limits of physical vision and be willing to go beyond it. We must begin to trust the voice within that tells us there is more than meets the eye. We must develop a deeper perception, a spiritual sight, that allows us to see people for who they truly are, to recognize purpose even in pain, and to follow paths that may look uncertain but feel undeniably right. Because the world is full of illusions. And if we keep trusting only what we see, we will continue to fall for the same traps. But if we open ourselves to a higher way of seeing, we unlock the ability to move through life with clarity, courage, and conviction. Not because the path is always visible, but because the vision within us knows where we are going. This is where true sight begins, not with the eyes, but with the soul. Awakening the inner eye. What is spiritual sight? If physical vision sees the surface, then spiritual sight sees the truth. It is not limited by the laws of optics or the shape of objects. It doesn't need light to function, nor does it rely on clarity of the eye. Spiritual sight is the clarity of the soul. It is the awakening of the inner eye, sometimes called the mind's eye, the third eye, or the eye of the heart. It allows you to perceive what is not visible, to sense what cannot be explained, and to know what has not yet occurred. Spiritual sight is not about fantasy. It is not wishful thinking or imagination. It is an intuitive knowing, a deep sense of direction, understanding, and alignment that bypasses logic yet never contradicts truth. It shows you the path when all visible signs say turn back. It reveals the essence of people when their words or faces try to deceive. It helps you recognize destiny dressed in rags, miracles hidden in chaos, and wisdom rising from brokenness. To awaken spiritual sight is not to abandon reason, but to go deeper than reason. It is to develop another layer of perception, one that listens more than it looks, feels more than it fears, and trusts more than it hesitates. And here's the paradox. Spiritual sight is not something you acquire by striving harder. You awaken it by becoming still. In the noise of the world, the voice of the spirit is drowned out. The constant input from our senses, screens, media, opinions, distractions, clutters the channel through which spiritual guidance speaks. But when we learn to silence the noise, to pause the frantic search for answers outside of ourselves, something extraordinary begins to unfold. We start hearing the quiet truth within. You've felt it before. That still, small voice that whispered leave when everyone said stay. The unexplainable peace that came over you before you made a life-changing decision. The gut feeling that someone wasn't telling the whole truth, even though their face looked sincere. That was not paranoia. That was not emotion. That was the early signal of spiritual sight. The awakening of the inner eye requires trust, not in the world, but in your inner connection to something greater than yourself. Some call it God, others call it spirit, the universe, higher self, divine wisdom. The name doesn't matter nearly as much as the experience of it. When you are in alignment with that presence, your sight changes. You begin to discern rather than judge. You begin to feel your way forward rather than forcing your way through. You start to recognize that things are not happening to you, but for you. And it's not always comfortable. Spiritual sight often leads you down paths that others cannot see. It may ask you to walk alone, to stand against the crowd, to trust in timing that makes no sense. It will challenge your reliance on proof, evidence, and validation. It will invite you to act before you can explain, to believe before you see, to surrender before you understand. And yet, every time you follow it, you find yourself exactly where you were meant to be. The great mystics, prophets, sages, and visionaries of history all lived by spiritual sight. They were often misunderstood in their time because they saw things no one else could see. They acted on faith, spoke of realities not yet visible, and walked with a certainty that baffled those around them. But it was not arrogance, it was vision. A vision rooted not in sight, but in spiritual clarity. Spiritual sight also allows you to see others more compassionately. When someone lashes out at you, physical eyes see hostility, but spiritual sight sees hurt. When someone boasts and brags, physical eyes see pride, but spiritual sight sees insecurity. You stop reacting to people's masks, and you start understanding their wounds. This doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. Because you are no longer manipulated by behavior, you are anchored in truth. Another remarkable feature of spiritual sight is that it can see into the unseen realms of potential. While physical vision says, "I'll believe it when I see it," spiritual sight says, "I believe it before I see it." That's what makes it so powerful. It gives you the strength to keep building even when there's no structure yet, to keep sowing even when there's no harvest, to keep hoping even when the evidence screams otherwise. Why? Because your spirit has seen the outcome your eyes have not yet caught up to. But awakening this inner eye takes commitment. You must train it, you must protect it, and you must feed it. Just like physical vision requires light, spiritual sight requires solitude. Just like physical vision needs focus, spiritual sight needs surrender. And just as physical vision gets stronger with use, spiritual sight deepens with trust. You don't need to be a mystic to develop this kind of sight. You just need to be willing to stop letting your eyes make all your decisions. You need to be willing to go within before you act out. You need to pause before you judge. You need to reflect before you react. In a world obsessed with image, be someone who seeks essence. In a world chasing clarity through screens, be someone who finds vision in silence. Because when your spiritual sight is awakened, you will never walk blindly again. Even when your eyes see darkness, your soul will know where the light is. Even when others see failure, you will sense preparation. Even when the world sees endings, you will see beginnings. And that is what makes all the difference. When vision fails, sight begins. There comes a time in every life when the eyes can no longer guide you. When what you see offers no comfort, no clarity, and no certainty. The path ahead is dark, the road behind is gone, and the present moment feels like a fog of confusion. In those moments, when physical vision fails, something greater is invited to rise. That is the moment when true sight begins. We often think clarity comes from seeing things clearly, but some of the clearest truths are revealed only in the dark. Think of a seed buried beneath the soil. To the outside world, it looks lost, forgotten, or dead. But in truth, the most important transformation is happening beneath the surface, in the hidden place, in the silence, in the dark. That's where growth begins. The same is true for us. When your eyes can no longer show you the way, your spirit begins to speak. When your plans fall apart, and what you saw coming never arrives, you are forced to listen deeper, feel deeper, and trust deeper. You learn that spiritual sight does not come from perfect circumstances, It is born from broken ones. You learn that God does not always lead you through what is visible, but through what is true. And often, the truth cannot be seen. It must be sensed. This is where many people give up. When they can't see the way forward, they stop moving. When they can't see the purpose, they assume there is none. But spiritual sight requires a different kind of faith, a faith that says, even though I walk through the valley of shadows, I know I am not alone. A faith that walks through fire not because it looks safe, but because the Spirit says go. A faith that closes its physical eyes and opens its inner one. Let me ask you something. Have you ever gone through a season where nothing made sense? Where the things you once depended on vanished? Where the people you trusted turned away? Where the dreams you carefully crafted fell apart? And in the beginning, it felt like the end. But somehow, through the confusion, you discovered a new clarity. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. You stopped looking outward for answers and started looking inward. You stopped trusting the temporary and started anchoring in the eternal. You realized that what you thought was a breakdown was actually a breakthrough. That what looked like rejection was really protection. That what appeared to be darkness was the shadow of God's hand covering you while He worked something new. That is spiritual sight. It begins where your eyes stop. It grows in the soil of surrender. It matures in the face of mystery. It teaches you to live with your soul turned inward, even as your feet move forward. It says, I may not know where this is going, but I know who is going with me. And when you live like that, something shifts. You stop needing constant proof. You stop asking the world to validate your vision. You stop panicking every time you can't see the whole staircase, because you've learned to trust the next step. You stop fearing uncertainty, because you've realized uncertainty is the exact environment where faith grows and vision sharpens. Some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet are not the ones with the clearest plans or the most flawless strategies. They are the ones who have walked through the fire blindfolded and came out not just alive, but wiser, humbler, and stronger. They've developed a kind of sight that isn't shaken by circumstance because it isn't rooted in the material. It is rooted in divine alignment. You see, there are moments when God will intentionally obscure your physical vision, not to punish you, but to strengthen your inner sight. Because if you could always see the outcome, you would never develop trust. If everything went according to plan, you would never learn to surrender. If every door opened instantly, you would never appreciate the meaning of delay. Spiritual sight is often activated in the wilderness. It is in the waiting seasons, the dry valleys, the silent nights, that you begin to see what truly matters. Your priorities shift. Your discernment sharpens. Your heart learns to recognize what your eyes once overlooked. This kind of sight allows you to find hope in hopeless places, to see a lesson in loss, to recognize opportunity in adversity. It helps you endure trials not because they are easy, but because you've seen something deeper on the other side. A glimpse, a knowing, a sense that this pain is not pointless, that this storm is part of your becoming. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all is this. Once spiritual sight has been awakened, you can never return to blindness. You can't go back to trusting appearances. You can't be satisfied with shallow answers. You won't be content following what merely looks good. You will be drawn to what feels true. When vision fails, sight begins. Not a sight of the eyes, but a sight of the soul. Not a sight of control, but of surrender. Not a sight that avoids the unknown, but one that embraces it with reverence. So if you find yourself in a season where you cannot see clearly, don't panic. Don't rush. Don't quit. You are being invited into a higher way of seeing. One that does not rely on the condition of your circumstances, but on the condition of your connection with your Creator, your calling, and your deepest self. In that space, where physical vision has failed, you will begin to see with the clarity of heaven. And that changes everything. Living beyond sight, choosing a spirit-led life. Once your spiritual sight has been awakened, once you've experienced clarity beyond your eyes, you are faced with a choice. Will you return to a life led by appearances, or will you walk forward led by your spirit? Because to see spiritually is not just a moment of awakening, it is a calling to live differently, to choose differently, to respond, speak, and move in alignment with something greater than what the world shows you. This choice is not easy. The world will constantly try to pull you back into superficial living. You will be tempted to chase what sparkles instead of what is sacred, People will question your path, not because it's wrong, but because they cannot see what you now see. They haven't walked through the darkness you've endured. They haven't learned to hear the voice you now trust. And so, the life you are called to build will often look invisible, even foolish, to others. But make no mistake, it is real. It is sacred, and it is yours to follow. To live a spirit-led life is to walk by faith, not by sight. It means you no longer wait for external validation before you take action. You no longer need every detail to be visible before you say yes. You no longer fear detours, because you've learned that spirit-led living turns even setbacks into divine redirections. You don't chase every open door. You discern which ones are aligned with your purpose. You don't panic when the crowd moves one way. You stay still until you are moved by something higher. In this kind of life, your priorities shift. You begin to care more about peace than popularity, more about integrity than image, more about obedience to your inner knowing than acceptance from outer voices. You make decisions that don't always make sense to the rational mind, but they bring you a sense of peace that surpasses understanding. That peace is confirmation. And when challenges arise, and they will, you are no longer shaken as easily. You don't crumble just because circumstances look unstable. You know that what's visible is not the whole story. You understand that God often works behind the curtain before he reveals what he's prepared. You keep showing up, even when no one claps. You keep building, even when no one notices. You keep believing, even when the evidence is invisible. Because your sight is no longer in your eyes. It's in your soul. Living beyond sight also means you become a different kind of presence in the world. You become someone who sees people not as they appear, but as they truly are. You see potential in the broken, courage in the quiet, and strength in the ones the world overlooks. You treat people with deeper compassion, not because of what they give you, but because of who they are at their core. And that kind of vision changes relationships. It heals families. It creates communities rooted in truth, not performance. And then something remarkable happens. As you choose to live from spiritual sight, you begin to inspire others to do the same. Your peace becomes contagious. Your steadiness becomes an anchor for those still tossed by waves. Your unwavering faith becomes a light for those stumbling in the dark. Not because you're perfect, but because you've learned how to see beyond what's visible. You become a mirror, reflecting the kind of clarity that only comes from within. But let me be honest, this path will cost you. It will cost you your need for control. It will cost you your addiction to instant results. It will cost you your comfort with certainty and your obsession with image. You'll have to let go of the life you planned to step into the life you were called to live. You will walk through unknowns. You will face moments of doubt, but you will never be alone. Because spirit-led living means you are always guided, even when you don't have all the answers. This is not just about faith. It's about surrender. It's about handing over the steering wheel and saying, I may not know where this road leads, but I trust the one who's leading me. And when you do that, when you make that decision over and over again, you will begin to see doors open that you didn't even know existed. You will meet people who were divinely placed in your path. You will find yourself in rooms you weren't qualified to enter, speaking words you didn't prepare, walking in favor you didn't earn. That is the power of a spirit-led life. You don't just exist, you expand. You don't just survive, you awaken. You don't just go through life, you grow through it, becoming more clear, more whole, more aligned with who you were always meant to be. And so, I ask you now, are you ready to live beyond sight? Are you willing to release the shallow comfort of what's visible for the sacred clarity of what's true? Are you prepared to walk not by what your eyes tell you, but by what your spirit knows? Because the truth is, the world doesn't need more people who can see. It needs more people who can perceive. People who aren't fooled by appearances. People who don't bend to the trends. People who live with purpose, walk in wisdom, and lead with vision that goes far beyond what the eyes can grasp. Let that person be you. Let today be the day you stop living from the outside in and start living from the inside out. Because when you live by spiritual sight, you will never be truly lost. You will always be led. And the path ahead, even when unseen, will always take you exactly where you were meant to be.